It's now time for our first guest speaker. It's Dr. Phillip Randall. I met Dr. Randall last night, and Fred came over to me and says, "Come and meet Randall." And I said, "Oh, he's one of us. Come meet him." So I went over and I went, "Oh, hello, Randall." And then I saw his name tag, and his first name was Phillip, and his last name was Randall. And I went, "Oh my God, I've just called him by his last name." And I was really embarrassed, and I started calling him Phillip after that. And then this morning I was sitting with Dr. Randall's lovely wife, and she called him Randall. And I went, there's something wrong here. I said, "So is his name Phillip or is it Randall?" And she said, "His name is Phillip, but everyone calls him Randall because he's a former football star, and football stars were always called by their last name." And I said, "Okay, so it's Randall." "Yes," she said, "unless you want to piss him off, then you can call him Phillip." Dr. Randall is an internationally recognised resource on retirement planning and education. As an author, speaker, workshop leader and executive coach, he has been a frequent contributor to news and print media on said topics throughout the United States, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. He has been an effective leader in the fields of business, government and education. As a leader, he is a former chairman of the Commission of Aging in the city of Akron, Ohio, and for over 30 years has served as a human capital executive in the Fortune 500 corporations such as the Rockefeller Group, the Hay Group, the Northeast Utilities, Nortel Networks, Unisys Corp, and Alcatel Lucent SA, whatever that means. What does that? Probably means something really important, but it just says SA, so that's what it is. SA for life. He has received recognition and numerous awards, including the National Torch Award for Community Service, Association for Talent Development, the Distinguished Service Award, National Black MBA Association, and Top Citizen Honoree House of Representatives in the state of Ohio, the Bright Idea Award from Harvard University, and many, many, many more. As an educator, he has published over 30 articles, produced 4 films, and developed retirement planning education programs delivered to over 50,000 employees within corporations and universities around the world, preparing for both financial and non-financial aspects of life planning. He is a founding member and Adjunct Fellow at the Institute of Lifespan Development and Gerontology, the University of Akron, and former faculty member of the Graduate School of Management and Urban Professions, New School for Social Research in New York, and the School of Advanced Studies in the University of Phoenix. He has received his BA from Youngstown State University, an MA from the University of Michigan, and a PhD from the University of Akron. He earned a Specialist in Aging certification from the Institute of Gerontology. I can't wait to find out what gerontology is. From the University of Michigan and Wayne State University, Michigan, where he studied under Woodrow Hunter, a national pioneer and leader of retirement education. Dr. Randall is currently the managing partner of the Thorndike Group, a human capital consultancy specializing in individual and organizational effectiveness from Atlanta, Georgia, adjunct faculty, Capella University School of Business and Technology, Minneapolis, and board member of year-long Institute for Education and Learning Research, Chicago, Illinois. Would you please welcome to the stage Dr. Phillip Randall.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I noticed, Michael, I didn't get a kiss. He was kissing the girls for some reason, but...
Oh, come on,
Oh, okay. Thank you. I feel better. By way of that introduction, I just want you to know that as you sit in the wing and you hear the introduction and they begin to go over your life, you say, "Oh my, was that me?" And I said, well, basically, I'm not good enough to be humble. Okay? but I am grateful. And I'm grateful for several things. One of them is I'm grateful to Paul Fife, who in 1992 sat in an audience like you in Toronto, Canada, and listened to my blah, 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 and provided the opportunity for me to come down under and do a whirlwind tour over all the major cities in both Australia and New Zealand. How many of you had that rare opportunity to be in my audience? Okay, a few of you, right. So, interesting enough, don't tell anybody what I said because I'm going to say it again. Now, and the only thing that's changed is me. I would have to say that since the last time I was here, I have successfully circled the Earth. I successfully circled the sun on the Earth, traveling 667,000 miles an hour, 24 times. Now, despite my youthful appearance, you're supposed to laugh at that. Despite my youthful appearance, I did not come down with the most recent rain. One thing I did learn, though, is that no man is a prophet in their own land. So that's why when Paul said, come down, I came down so that perhaps I could be a prophet in someone else's land. Having said that, though, when you are often introduced as an expert in something, I want you to know that the first thing I want to do for you today is to let you know I know no truths. Nothing I'm about to say to you is the truth. Nothing I'm about to share with you is the truth. All I have is an opinion. Okay? Now, having said that, I'll give time for those who thought I was going to give the truth to leave. Oh, by the way, there is one truth that I know, and I'll get it out quickly. Wet birds don't fly at night. I'll repeat it. Wet birds don't fly at night. Now, I am collecting some information on another truth, and that truth is pigeons have no life cycle. They just show up, full adults. Now, I even enjoy that myself. Now, I like you, wherever you are. Now, what I want you to do, I want to enlist you, if you see any small pigeons, to send me an email. You'll get my address because I want to make sure I collect good data and that I won't have to tell anecdotal stories, that my stories will all be based on fact and good data, not fake news. You with me? All right. So I have the opportunity to say, I actually prepared a presentation in spite of what it might look like so far. My presentation is going, what? Okay, there it is. It's 3 segments, and they told me I have 45 minutes, and you can't see it, but they put a clock down here to make sure that I stay on course, because my tendency is not to do that. But what I hope to do with you is do the classic that they taught me, and it says, first thing you're going to do to be effective as a presenter is tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Now, that would be your success. Now, that's a recipe. Now, I understand that at the end of this presentation, and when you leave, and the end of the event to 2 days, they're going to send you a survey and say, did that chap do anything for you? And I don't think it's a binary question. It's going to be a scale of 1 to 5. Did he do something for you really good, or did he do something for you not so good? And so the point I want to make to you is that this is my objective. I'm telling you what I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you what I told you. And so I just want you to know you're supposed to say, I did good. You know, understand that right now, so that I can get invited back again in another 20 years. It takes about that amount of time for me to mature. As far as my thoughts are concerned, the truth of the matter is I'm going to tell you the same thing I told you the last time. And that is significant because we're going to look back. We're going to look back and say, well, what was that chap talking about 20 years ago? Well, what the chap was talking about 20 years ago has just become law in your country 20 years later. The idea being that relationships with the customer is the most important source of opportunity. And from the relationship construction, you create the ingredients of trust. And through the building upon trust, you become effective. Now, let me give you an example of that. As you were driving in this morning and I was on the road hitchhiking, you would have passed me by and not thought a thing of it. Right, but at the end of the day, if you were going home, and there I was again, hitchhiking, you might pass me by, but it would bother you. And the reason why is that a basic law of human interaction and relatedness and affiliation is that the more you know about me, the more responsible for me you become. All right. I just gave you that insight. All you youngsters, and dating is coming up, and you know the technique. The technique is to share more about you. And as you share more about you, the other person will become responsible for you. Now, if that's in fact true, and I don't know many truths, but if that's in fact true, then the opportunity in relationship construction as an advisor would be, in fact, rather than you trying to get them to do all the talking, it might be worthwhile that you do some talking about who you are and why it is important in terms of who you are. Because the manifestation of the value of the advice that you might provide will be based on the relationship that you construct. And if the relationship that you construct can be nourished and developed, then you then begin to create the opportunity for trust. Now, in the world of private banking, and years ago in Vienna, the idea was that there was a concept of relationship with the bank that was carried out by the private group, basically for those who were wealthy. But what we learned from that is that they were very critical in constructing trusting relationships, both in the brand of the bank and the deportment and decorum of the individual who was in the private group. Right. And they did it generation after generation for that family. But not only did they address their money, they addressed their relationship with the physician in the community, the relationship with the dentist in the community, the relationship with the accountant and the lawyer. They were actually the central of providing counsel to that particular client. Now, that particular process informs us, but that information all started long ago. That was my discussion, and it hasn't changed. But in order to bring validity to the discourse, I was involved in conducting research back then on the behavioral efficacy of retirement planning programs. Meaning that if in fact you participate in an education program, would you do something as a result having been educated? Right? So you would bring people, and just bear with me a moment, we brought in people from all over I think the program I did, I know the program that I did, which with, now you might know, have heard of it, AT&T. And we went in and we set up two groups. One group received the education. It was an experimental design, pre-test, post-test. One group received the treatment, the other group didn't receive the treatment. 6 months hiatus. We came back and asked them, we tested them, what you're doing now, and 6 months later we tested them what they're doing and found out that, yes, people who in fact receive education do in fact carry out activities associated with planning for their retirement or planning for the rest of their lives. So that then became valuable data, because from that, prior to that, everyone was talking about anecdotes. Right? They didn't have any evidence to support their position. All of a sudden, there was opportunity for me to give and share this data all around the country. And so the foundation that, looking back, and when I was here after traveling around the Earth's sun some 20 times, I was talking principally about that. That morphed into what was called holistic planning. And holistic planning was informed by private banking. And the holistic planning process suggests that individuals are more than just a discussion around money. Right? You would have to talk to them about not money, but their goals in life. Because money is a means by which they might achieve those goals, correct? Right, but as important would be their health. Because who cares about the money if you don't have your health? And even the people that have money can't buy their health, right? So there would be some interest that you would want to be able to talk about the person in terms of their totality, the whole person. So I got involved in that process of looking at what was called holistic planning, and now I call it whole life planning. And I suggest, in terms of what the model might be one where the advisor could actually embrace that role. But the discussion in the foundation in terms of the dissertation or private banking takes us to a place where there were, here comes everybody. So at the time, there was this group, baby boomers, some 76 million in the United States, that was all ready to begin to transition out of work, right? So there was a need for retirement planning as such, right? That process became a commodity. And then here came everybody again. And who is that? The millennials. There are more millennials in the United States than there are baby boomers. There were 76 million baby boomers, and now there are going to be 78 million millennials. How many here are in the age group 18 to 34? Raise your hand. Okay, we got a few of them here. Right. So here comes everybody again. Well, what is the reason for talking about this? Well, one reason is that those individuals who were in the baby boomer group, when they were born, their length of life was expected only to be 47 years old. Just think about that. When you were born, you were only going to live to be 47. Just think about the institution of marriage in relationship to that. So when those people were getting married and they said forever, it wasn't for a long time. But today, when you get married, and forever, whoa, what's happening? And you know, you ever notice those pictures of those married couples for a long time? Even when they smile, they're frowning. It is as if something's wrong. So the marriage institution obviously needs to be reviewed and reconsidered. For those millennials, what you're faced with, and we're working on this whole idea of the 100 years life, we would call the fit 100. Those individuals are going to live to be 100 and they're going to be fit. So now, as an advisor, just talking about money is insufficient. You will need to talk about people in terms of their progression through their lifespan, right? When they're, obviously it's going to argue for some market segmentation. You just can't say one shoe fits everybody, one dress fits everybody. No, you have the one group 10 years, the next 10 years, everything's changed. The next 10 years, things have changed again. Right, the next 10 years, it's not a matter of 65 any longer. It's a matter of looking at 85 and saying, what are the things I'm going to be doing when I'm 95? But one is quite interesting. People say, right now, people are thinking, I don't want to live to be 100. What am I going to do? Well, look, you never ask a 55-year-old if they want to live to be 100. You ask the 99-year-old. That person has perspective, you see. And it's very clear. You don't miss that point. Right? In terms of the advisor, though, what is happening is that that population that you're dealing with, it is changing. Therefore, product needs to be changed. But one thing that will be redundant and resplendent and desirable is the value of relationship that's based on trust. And trust is only devised after familiarity. Now, when we talk about familiarity, we're talking about relationship construction at a level of intimacy. All right? A level of understanding of intimacy. Now, how does that happen? What we know is that most people, in terms of service delivery, they're trying to meet the express need of the other person, the express need of the market, what the people in that particular market say they want, okay? And then the other group of the people are going to try to do whatever they say they do. If the population said, this is what I want, and then the service provider says, this is what I'm going to deliver, they're trying to do exactly that. But both of those groups are going to be eliminated. The group that's remaining that's going to differentiate themselves will be that group that can meet the unexpressed need of the customer. The customer hasn't said it yet, or the client. They haven't said what they want yet. You would need to be able to have such a level of a relationship and intimacy in your relationship that you will be able to know what they want and need before they say it. Let me give you an example. Sony creating the Walkman. Some of you are old enough to remember that. That's just what I wanted. I wanted my music to be mobile, right? Okay. Right now, what would be another example of producing a product that the people didn't really say, but it said, wow, that's just what I wanted? You know, I guess all of you are looking at your iPhones right now. I guess Phillip is looking at his, right in the front row. You're not Phillip? No, you're not Phillip. I thought you were Phillip. You have Phillip's jacket on. I'm going to let him know that. The point, though, is that that's exactly what's going on. Everyone's looking at the little module, and that's exactly what I wanted all along. I wanted this little module, right? But people felt, and only 10 years ago this happened. Only 10 years ago. Now, they created something that was an unexpressed need. Let's take it down to a more fundamental level. A fundamental level is between husband and wife. The husband takes flowers home to the wife, not because the husband likes flowers, or maybe not because the wife likes flowers, but he knows that he gives her flowers, she's going to like him, right? Right, because he's meeting a need and it's unexpressed, right? Right? That's because he knows what she wants. He has an intimate relationship. Now, arguably, the advisor would say, well, how can I get this? Well, I suggest that you have that as your intent. You see, you have that level of understanding with your client base as your intent. Don't allow it to be the wildest flight of your imagination. You want to have it as your plan of action. And just think, if that was your intent, how would the alignment of your behaviors change? What would you, in fact, do differently? Now, I know some of you are looking at me with this puzzle on your face. This really doesn't make a lot of sense. Right. But trust me, I don't know the truth. I'm only positioning a position. Right. And the way that you can have your own truth is to take a trial. take an effort, make an effort, take a look at it. So the here and now, I think that, I failed to take you to this model that I want to share, is the model of the synapse. See, I'm arguing that in the whole life planning model, that the advisor could in fact be the synapse, just like in the case of a nerve. It would be the synapse in the community where they would be involved in transfer information between the neurons. And who are the neurons? The neurons are other parts of the community. Right now, I go to my physician, and my physician asks me, do you have a will? Right? This is the conversation of the physician asking me, do I have a will? Well, obviously, the advisor in that model would be asking, do you have a will? You say, who is your therapist? When was the last time you had a physical examination? What is the relationship between you and your wife and your children? All of these dynamics are present in terms of your whole life because those are the things that are affecting you. But just look at one thing that's very, very clear that consumes our lives more than anything else. It's a four-letter word, and it's called work, right? Work is so pervasive in our lives that it gets us up in the morning, brings us home at night, tells us when to eat, tells us when to sleep, and tells us when to have sex, and you thought you were making those decisions. And so, if that's in fact the case, why would there not be a discussion by the advisor about why you work? And everyone assumes that I'm working for the money. Everyone assumes that there's been some conscious decision as to why I work. Wrong. The issue is that you've been programmed to work. You've been socialized to be a worker. My research shows that few people ever make a conscious choice to work or not to work. It is only when they begin to reach the point in the end when they can't physically work or somebody's telling them it's time to stop working that they begin to think, well, what about this work? And they'll say, well, the first thing I'm going to do leisure when I start working. All the time that you've been working, leisure has been nothing but rest and recuperation to go back to work. You have no leisure skills. What it amounts to is your life to become a continuous Sunday afternoon. Think about it. The issue and opportunity then is to begin to make that transition, and the advisor can actually be the filter of low-frequency impulses. What would they be? Well, high-frequency impulses certainly work, isn't it? All right? Another item, act as the valves to ensure that the impulses passes across them in one direction only. That means that if the advisor in the community, and I know it takes a little opportunity to leap and get into this model and serve as a synapse, but let's take it just as an opportunity to consider it. To consider it. Innovation only occurs when one actually allows the imagination to take flight. Redundancy and staying where you are occurs when you do become redundant. Now, allow your imagination to take you to the point where you might be a synapse, if you will. And that synapse is that you're in the community and you're actually modulating and managing the resources for your client because you have a relationship with them at a level of intimacy that you purposely worked on and constructed and developed. And then the moniker that will be used is that it's a trusting. See, that word will come about then. I trust them. Huh? What is it that we look for in those who provide advice to us? 3 things. I know I'm getting a little far ahead of myself, but I think it'll be appropriate. There are 3 things that we look for. We look for good judgment. We look for quality skills, and we look for empathy, right? Those are the 3 things. Like you go to your physician, and you expect your physician to provide good judgment, have skills, right, and be empathetic. I expect that to be the same set of capability that the advisor has, and that the advisor is developing. That good judgment, set of skills, and empathy. It's the empathetic component that we use to develop the relationship forged around the idea of trust, breeded through an intimate relationship. Now, consider that for a moment. Okay, take you. In transitioning the evidence, I have an obligation, though, to say what has happened here in New Zealand had happened also in the United States, where there became this idea of fiduciary responsibility for the advisor, right? We had it in the United States, but the current president put it on hold for whatever reason. I'm not quite, I'm supposed to say no comment. Having said that, though, you're far ahead of us in that particular embrace and understanding. But yet, the idea is a little different. So I wanted to take a moment to look at some of the research. But I'm saying that why would we need to look at the research? Because if you just talk about it anecdotally and you don't reinforce it in terms of what has happened, is that 25 years ago I was talking anecdotal, based on some research that I conducted. Here and now, there's data. There's data in your community. You know, years ago, we had what we call the achieving alpha, right? And then we had achieving beta, you know, the issue of volatility. This is what the advisors is involved in. I happen to know and understand these terms, and so where we are now in gamma. How does gamma actually differ from alpha? Gamma differs from alpha. This is merely a model. Please, don't get caught in the words. It merely is a model. What gamma does is that it's actually doing behavioral coaching. It's actually looking for long-term strategy rather than today's strategy in order to provide advice. These are models that are evolved and become today. And the tendency is toward what? Gamma, right? What is behavioral counseling? When the market goes down, don't freak out. Right? That fundamentally. I'm just trying to break it down. You guys know more about it than I do. I'm not trying to take the position that I do know as much about it, but at least this particular process may be of importance to you. But just for the basis of discussion, when we look at some of the research, what's happening? Okay. As we know, we live in dynamic times and things are changing right around us, correct? You would agree with me there. I'm suggesting whole person planning as a part of the here and now. I am also suggesting that there's an opportunity for you to do something about it. I'm suggesting a relationship that's involved. All the definitions and evidence supports that. If we look at, and I say this respectfully, we look at the Vanguard model or we look at the Fidelity model. These obviously are big houses in the United States. They are suggesting the transition into this new model. 20 years ago, and when I started in the field, the talk about whole person planning was problematic. But today, everyone's talking about having terms as follows. You are your leader of your life. You are the chairperson of your life. Everything has moved to a concept of self-management, right? Self-management. Even retirement is now self-management. You're making choices of when you're going to leave work or not leave work. Everything is moved. In corporations, benefit administration, self-management. Everything is about self-management. So if you as a financial planner does not understand the issue of work and the issue of this transition of self-management and in fact how work is changing, you know, the baby boomers have a certain type of culturation that relates to work, but millennials have something very different. And by the way, this is the first time in the American workforce where we have 4 generations there at one time. 4 different cultures all sitting there at one time, and someone's trying to lead them. And the leading really doesn't happen in the old way from the top down. The leading really happens from the bottom up, right? And the way that you get that bottom up is by asking a simple question of those people on the bottom, what is it that you want? that model is transferable into our business, which is helping people be successful. Taking a closer look at today, the shift toward fee-based revenue has increasingly been adopted by even the largest firms, correct? And from warehouses to private clients, often bundled together with comprehensive financial plans, services that are either very low cost or entirely free. Why? Because their impact on retention rates is what we're really trying to do, build, right? Is significant. So allow me to leap forward. The transition. In leaping forward, we have to leap backwards and embrace that private banking model. It informs us. We are old school deportment with a new school intelligence. And that then we would revisit the synapse, we would put the advisor in that position, and we will begin to move forward as a point of consideration. Come on. Okay. That takes us to this position that technology has resulted in countless advantages and efficiencies for organizations, creating fast-paced, knowledge-based, ever-evolving environment that we're involved in, and each one of you are engaged in it. And as a result of that, those three items that I spoke to, good judgment, skills, empathy, as a result of the advance of technology, what is happening? Artificial intelligence is actually able to provide what? Good judgment and skills. Now today, as an advisor, you're going to that artificial intelligence and getting that good judgment, let the portfolio and the algorithm go and say what the probabilities are, and then you talk to the client about it, right? How many know that that refrigerator in your home is artificial intelligence? It is a robot, right? The refrigerator is a robot. The vacuum cleaner is a robot. Your computer is a robot. Okay, so they're all running on some simplistic algorithm. What is happening now as technology is advancing and moving, you can see I'm talking about, is actually creating a situation where trust is being discouraged, perhaps. But here's the point I want to make. Technology is actually advancing to the point where it can replace those two levels, good judgment, skills. And it is currently working to provide empathy. And what does that mean for the advisor? It actually, some people are even suggesting there's an elimination of this function, as so many other functions. So what we need to do is learn how to program the robot. Right? Because that's the next skill, because we won't be needed anymore. And you say, well, wait a minute. I have the relationship. Well, right here in your backyard at the University of Akron, they have a project called Baby X. And what are they doing? They are having the computer, the robot, the avatar, the humanoid, smile at the baby. The baby is smiling at the humanoid. As the baby smiles at the humanoid takes the intelligence, processes it quickly, and creates a reaction of smiling back at the baby. And then it's a successive approximation to get to a point where they're actually communicating non-verbally. Right here is happening. Baby X, check it out. So what that suggests then is that we will move to a point where we will not be necessary. But we have time. We have time. But, the research is called deep learning. You haven't heard about it? Look it up. I think you can Google anything today, right? Deep learning. What does deep learning mean? Deep learning means that artificial intelligence learns at hyper speed. So it won't be 20 years or 100 years it took us to get out of the cave. It's going to be 2 days. Right? just to give you perspective in terms of how quickly deep learning occurs and how quickly empathy will be the deportment of the humanoid. So I'm saying, yep, we have time. I'm trying to create the burning platform, because it is only the burning platform that causes change, a reason for you to change. You know, the everyday person that I work with just says, oh, I'm all for change, as long as it's happening to somebody else. Not for me. So I had a meeting, and I don't know if Aaron is in the room, if Aaron Cleve's in the room. I was talking to Aaron down in Wellington, and I said, you know, Aaron, what is it? I said, we've been talking about this. 25 years ago here, I was talking about relationship construction and trust and saying about the whole person. And here we are now saying the same things again. And I said, what is it that would make it valuable for these groups to come out and to hear this discussion? What can they take away? Well, there's only two things that you get out of conferences. One is that you get something that you can immediately put in effect to cause and help your business, or two, you get education. Right? Right. Education only works for a short time by the time you get from here to your car. Right? I'm educated, but at what point do your behavior change? Right? So the argument and the big question had become, well, you heard all of this before. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? I looked at the feedback that I got some 25 years ago, and they said, well, I was disappointed in that presentation because I didn't get anything that could help me run my business. Well, look at that. All the data, all the research is now saying, well, that's what we should have done. And here we are one more time, redundantly queuing that message. Redundantly queuing that message. And so to you, to make this productive, for you to make this worthwhile, it is not that I'm bringing some truth. It is more about what you're going to do about it. Correct? What you're going to do about it. What you're going to do about it if you're a leader. What you're going to do about it if you're just one of the many. What you're going to do about it. That's the question. And if you walk away, there's an opportunity that exists. There's a big book out called Homo Prospectus. The Homo Prospectus book suggests that human beings, and it's one of the first codification of research on this topic, from neuroscience, it says that human beings are basically planners. Now, I know if human beings are basically planners, I'm in like Flint, because that's what I do. And I already got a predisposition, so all I have to do is provide them with something that they can plan with and plan for, right? Would that not be true? Then what's the problem? Well, I think the problem is that you're looking at them monolithically, thinking just about money, when in fact they're concerned about their well-being, their distress, they have all other kind of issues. And they might even think that money will solve it too. I can remember having a client, I was trying to tell them about the whole money problem, and I was saying that, you know, I have some individuals that have lots of money, and they have these problems. And they said, well, I'd like to try that first. Now, I understand that that's an issue. But as an advisor, your opportunity is to have some level of intimacy and anticipate what the needs might be. So therein lies the opportunity. It may well reside in our ability to establish and maintain effective relationships, as did the private banker years ago. That is, true trusting relationships across generations and given families. And to be successful in conducting of this model, as previously discussed, one must first work to establish that ingredient called trust. What we know is that those who will survive in this new era will have a uniqueness informed by a tried and true marketing tenet. And that is the one where it talked about, the more you know about me, the more responsible for me you become. And looking at my clock, the clock is pushing me on and allow me to do this, the best made plans. This is an old Russian proverb that I think is telling in and of itself. It says, tell me who your friends are, and I will tell you who you are. And so, as an advisor, and as your customer base is there, tell me who your customers are, and I will tell you who you are. All right? So people are going to say, well, I'm a commission salesman. To my customers, that's what they want. Yes, I'm fee-based, and that's what my customers want. Right? But here I'm suggesting that you have an opportunity to make a transition. Inasmuch as you conceivably could take, all right, drink some of the Kool-Aid, and begin to make a change for yourself. Accordingly, let me just say this summarily. A good advice is both invaluable, a good advisor is both invaluable and, I argue, rare. It requires far more than selecting investments. We know that, and I don't mean to insult your intelligence. It requires substantial expertise and ability to manage emotions and expectations. See, that's when you're dealing with the whole. It requires the insight gained from true relationship with clients to meet their unexpressed needs. It requires an interest in the whole person. We shouldn't ever be afraid of saying so, right? We shouldn't be afraid of saying so. We should never shy away from providing the kinds of service and advice that will demonstrate that beyond any doubt. That is our opportunity. Good advisors add value. Damn it. Right? I used to use the exclamation mark, but the damn it felt better. Although I would say to you that my closing remarks may come across as anticlimactic. But let me say this to you. I happen to be a son of a father who was a deacon in the church, and although he worked in a steel mill during the week, on the weekends he did churching, you know. And I remember him always preparing, when asked to give a sermon to the congregation, he had this go-to sermon. And I want to share his go-to sermon with you, because I think it's thematic for what we have had to say thus far and what the opportunity will be for the rest of this particular conference. So I beg your indulgence. He tells the story that there's this old woman, she's sitting on the curb, and she's holding close to her a frail child. And she's looking up into the sky, and she said, Lord, why are so many of the children being killed every day in the streets? She sighs, Lord, why is there so much war and hate in the world? She sighs, and she says, I'm really concerned about this. What are you going to do about it? So there's a large silence, and the Lord speaks back. I did do something about it. I made you, and I made you, and I made you. And so the question becomes, any of the problems that we now have, the solution is not looking to the speaker for the answer. The solution is not looking for the rest of the conference to give you the tools and the equipment. It rests with you to take an action to do what you might believe is what is desirable. And let's not have another 25 years where you say, I heard that story about the relationship model. It didn't work for me. Let's not have that. Please allow me. In parting as well as in closing, let me share with you a statement that's been the beacon for my life, and I trust that through sharing with you, it would shed some light on yours. It was shared with the world by a 17th century English philosopher by the name of Russell Johnson, and he said this, I've updated it somewhat. He said, he or she who would live old age in honor and dignity must, when they are old, remember when they were young, and when they are young, consider that one day they might be old. Thank you. Yeah.
Coming up and thank you.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Thank you. I had fun. Please. I actually brought a companion this time. Alam, would you stand up? I don't know where you are. No. Please. Oh, she told me. It happens to be my wife. She just told me no, and she's not going to stand up. And what I learned about that? There she go. Thank you. She made the trip well worth the while. Thank you for allowing me that indulgence. Okay.